Well, I'm going to start off by a top tip for them as individuals, and this would go across anybody, not necessarily just in procurement teams. But one of the things that we know is that the neural pathways in the brain go from A to Z at supersonic speed. One of the ways that you can actually reprogram them and get them to stop and take pause is to ask yourself two questions. So here's a little tip. For the next 3 weeks, every time you clap eyes on another human, what I'd like you to do is to ask yourself what you do know, because what you do know will be tainted by your bias, your past experience, and all of the other things that cloud your thinking. Then ask yourself what you could know and what you should know. Those two questions drive a series of interesting thoughts in your head that actually change the plasticity of your brain and enable you to think differently about an individual. So that's the first thing. I'd ask you to think about you as an individual. The second thing I think procurement teams should be looking at is how they can affect the processes. Now, whether that's their own internal processes of how they recruit, or whether that's their processes of how they reach out to vendors or manage supply chains. All the processes in our organisations have to be inherently biased because they have people touching them. But if you go through them and you look at the biases that they carry and you take steps to be able to negate those biases in a very practical sense and share them, that's really important. And the last thing, and this one's always very thorny, make sure that as procurement you have prepared a business argument that isn't the usual business argument as to why you want to force more vendor diversity or more supply chain diversity. Make sure that you think about it from a business outcome for the whole business point of view. Because what I'm hearing is that although procurement teams want to do this work, very often they have to report upwards. And when they report upwards, they're told that actually we have more pressing things to worry about than just your inclusion and diversity process. The way to negate that is to make sure you've got a red hot business argument that even your CEO couldn't argue with.